if you can see the similarity between this question here and 2A. 2A. You can see that? Can you read me what 2A says?
122.
Perfect.
75%. Wait, what did I say?
Okay, very good. So they give me a percent, and I need to find that percent of a total amount, right? I'm going to show you. So for 10%, right, we found out it's really easy. I just move my decimal point over one place. And then if it's a factor of 10, I can just multiply that 10% by however many there are, right? So for 20%, I just multiply it by 2. If it was 30%, I'd multiply it by 3. If it was 50%, I could multiply it by 5. And that's a way that we can find percents when it's a factor of 10. But when it's not a factor of 10, we have a couple different options. I'm going to show you 2 different methods of how to solve problems like this. So one is kind of over there under the proportions and percents section. I kind of showed you one way. That's using a proportion to solve this. Okay, so I'm going to explain that to you. I'm also going to explain how to convert this English sentence into a mathematical equation. Okay? Sort of, but different. Like it's basically the same thing, but just kind of thinking about it a different way. So we're kind of taking 2 different paths that are very, very similar to each other, and we're going to end up at the same destination. Either way, I'm giving you 2 different methods of how to solve them because our brains all work differently, and I just want to give you 2 options of how to think about this. So for the proportion side, when I'm writing a proportion, my proportions always look like this, right? I have 2 ratios that are equal to one another. When I'm dealing with percents, the denominator on one side of my proportion is always going to be what? 100. Because I'm dealing with percent, so that's out of 100. So that tells me now that I can put my 75 right over the 100. And that part here represents that 75%. 75 over 100. 75 per 100. And then I have the other side of my proportion where I have part over whole. Part over whole. And the little trick to remember which one is which is that the number next to of is always going to be the whole. And where does the whole go, in the numerator or the denominator? The bottom, exactly. So 68 goes down there. And then what do you think I'm going to put in my numerator? Exactly. Exactly. Whatever variable you want to use. That I'm going to be boring and just pick x. So now I have my proportion. And now it's really easy to solve. How do I solve a proportion? Butterfly method. So I take 68 times 75. And I take x times 100, and I set those equals to each other. Exactly, so that's 100x. What's 68 times 75? Good, 5,100, 5,100. And now how do I solve for x? Divide both sides by 100. And so what do I get? Perfect. X equals 51. So that's one way we can get there. 51 is 75% of 68. Okay, I can kind of write a proportion and then solve it from there. I can also, the way that we can like convert something from English to Spanish, right? I can convert language to language. I can convert English into math. So what I do, I'm gonna write a little key here. So my percent needs to be converted into a decimal. So how do I write 75% as a decimal? 0.75, good. Okay, so that's this part. I just convert the percentage part into a decimal. Of, the word of means times, means multiply. 68, that's already in math, so I don't need to convert it. So I've got 7.75 times 68 it's going to be equals, so is equals, and then what number, what number is always my variable, it's my unknown, so it's x. So now I just wrote an equation, I just translated this from English into math, and now I just solved the equation. I just simplified 0.75 times 68, what does that give me? Huh? So 51 is x, and that's it. So you might like writing proportions better. This might make sense to you a little better. Either way, I'm going to get to that same answer. So what you're going to do now is you're going to work on this paper. In number 1, you are given a proportion and you need to write a question like that. So you're converting from math into an English question. You're writing that out. Okay. In number 2, you're doing what we just did. They give you a question and you're going to need to solve that question. Okay. You can use a proportion or you can kind of convert it right into an equation if that feels better. And then numbers 3 and 4, we're going to talk about a little bit tomorrow, but I want you to give those a try. I'm going to come around in just a minute and I'm going to check 2 things. I'm going to check your paper from last week, the proportion word problem paper. And then I'm also going to check this paper from today. Okay. I'll show you a copy of it. The proportion word problems, we worked on them Wednesday and Thursday last week. And I told you on Thursday that I would be